In this episode, I'll be showing how you can make some simple huts. Hello again. So, as usual, to make these, you'll need to download the PDF that's linked in the description. It's a pay what you want file, so it's essentially free if you put a 0 in the little box. Anyway, to start things off, we'll first need to take an empty toilet roll tube, and from that, we'll cut out a piece that's 4 inches long by 1.5 inches high, plus we'll also need to make a line a ½ inch in from one of the ends. And you should be able to get 2 of these from the one tube. Next, we'll take a glue stick and apply some glue to the smaller side of that line that I just mentioned, as well as a bit on the back of the other piece, and then glue these 2 pieces together, using the line as a guide for how much of the cardboard overlaps, which should result in this kind of thing that you can see here. Now, for this next part, we'll need to print out this page, from which we can cut out a strip that's 1.5 inches wide, to match the piece that we just made. So, depending on how you want the hut to look, you could cut a 1.5 inch piece from the stone part, if you want the walls to be made entirely of stone that is, or you could cut a piece from just the wood texture, or just the skins texture if you prefer that look, or you might like to make it so that it has half of one texture and half of another. And in this example, I'm actually going to go with something like this here. So it's mainly going to be a wall of wooden logs, but there's also going to be a ring of stones around the bottom. And here it is now that I've cut it out. Then it's a simple matter of applying plenty of glue to the back, just using the glue stick again, and then wrapping that around the outside of the cardboard tube, like you can see me doing here. And while you could cut the ends off when you're done, I'm just going to wrap them around onto the inside. So there you go, this is the kind of thing that we're aiming for. Okay, next we'll take the door frame texture, glue that to some thick card, and then cut that to size once it's dry. We can then apply some hot glue to one side of the door frame, and then stick that to one end of the toilet roll tube piece, making sure that the whole thing sits flat on the table, so something like this. Then we'll do the same thing on the other side, so apply the glue and then stick the door frame to the other end of the wall section to make one continuous piece, which should result in something like this. It's not super complicated. Right then, next we'll cut out a piece of the animal hide texture that's 2 inches by 1.5 inches and scrunch that up a few times to make it nice and malleable. Then I like to cut one of the longer edges slightly wavy, and also cut several little V-shapes along that same edge to make it look torn and tattered. Basically, something like this. It's then just a matter of folding that back and forth into a kind of concertina type shape, so that kind of thing, which we can then glue into place by adding some hot glue to the reverse side of the top of the doorway, and then, as I say, gluing it into place. So there you go. This is what it should look like at this stage, and next we'll start work on the roof. Okay, for this we'll take a toothpick or cocktail stick. The sort I'm using here are 8 centimeters long, which are just about long enough for what I need them for, but you could also use barbecue skewers or something like that, especially if you're making bigger huts than the one in this example. But yeah, I'll be using this cocktail stick, and that will need to be wrapped in some of the wooden texture. Though, if you find this part to be a bit too awkward, as it can sometimes be a bit tricky to get it started, you could perhaps paint or stain the stick a dark brown colour instead. That's another option. Anyway, I've gone with my usual method, so yeah, there you go. That's that done. And we'll need to make 6 of these. Okay, next we'll take a drinking straw, and for this particular size of hut, we'll cut a piece that's around 6 centimeters long. And I also like to cut one end into a point as well. So, something like that. Then we can temporarily glue the flat end of the straw to the cutting mat, though I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but I've positioned the point in this direction that you can see here. Then we can place the hut over the top so that the straw is in the middle and the doorway is in one of these 2 positions. Once we've done that, we can apply some hot glue to the top of the straw and to the top of the wall straight across from that. then place one of the cocktail sticks on top with a similar amount of the textured part overhanging each end. Hopefully you can see what I've done there. Not surprisingly, we'll then do a similar thing on the other side as well, like you can see me doing here. Next, I like to do a quick test fit with 2 more sticks, one either side of the door, just to give me an idea of where they need to be glued if I want to keep a consistent gap between them. And then they can be glued into place, this time on top of the 2 previous cocktail sticks. So there you go, something like that. And it's at this point that you can cut away the drinking straw, as the roof should be able to support itself now. Then it's just a matter of gluing on the final 2 sticks in the same way as the previous 2. Trying to keep the space between all of them roughly the same, which should result in this kind of thing. However, I'm not overly keen on the idea of being stabbed by the pointy ends during play, so all I'm doing here is cutting all of those away with a pair of clippers. And it's probably a good idea to wear safety glasses when doing this, as they do tend to shoot off with quite a bit of force. And while I'm at it, I'll also cut away most of the straw. But yeah, this is how it should look when we've done all of that. So, the roof's starting to take shape. Okay, for this next part, we'll need to print out the animal hide texture, and as you can see, I've cut it to size so that when it's flipped over and has the hut placed on top, we can draw a circle around the hut around 1 inch bigger all the way around. We'll then take some scissors and cut that out, like so, and just like we did with the door skins, we'll scrunch that up over and over again to make it nice and malleable, which is what you can see me doing here. There you go. Then we can fold that in half and do the same thing 2 more times, just so that we can cut a tiny bit away from the very tip, as we'll need to make a hole to go over the ends of the sticks. And I've dropped lucky there, as it never normally fits first time. Anyway, when gluing it into place, I like to run a thin line of hot glue along one of the sticks, and then push the roof texture down into that, and then do the same thing to the stick that's directly opposite from it, and stick that down as well. So, hopefully that made sense. Then, before gluing the rest, I like to try and kind of gather the paper equally between each stick, and then start gluing it down in a similar way. It's hard to explain, but essentially, we don't want the texture pulled tight between some sticks, and then hanging loosely between others. We want the amount of paper between each stick to be roughly the same-ish. Though, that will mean that it looks a little bit ugly at this stage, as we'll probably end up with unwanted folds and creases in places, as you can probably see here, but we'll sort those out later. In the meantime, we'll need to tidy up the edges, and the way I like to do this is to make them look a bit torn and tattered, similar to what I did with the door skins. So, that's what I'm going to do. I don't think there's a great way of describing this process, as every hut is going to be a bit different, but I am trimming some of the paper away so that it's not overhanging the walls too much. I'm not going overboard with all the little cuts and tears, and I also want to try and make sure that the ends of the sticks, they're poking out a little bit farther than the roof texture itself, as I do think it looks better that way. So, as you can see, I've fast forwarded to the end of this process, as it's probably the longest part of the entire build, to be honest, and when it's done, it should end up looking something like this that you can see here. That's the basic idea. However, as I said earlier, we are going to end up with some unsightly creases here and there. For example, there's this fold here that I'm not overly keen on, but there's a pretty easy way of fixing this. So, after making a few huts, you'll probably end up with some offcuts, like this piece. And all we're going to do is cut out a few of the skins that are still in one piece, like this one here. We can then scrunch that up, like the rest of the roof, and we can go ahead and make several of those. It's then just a matter of finding one of these that fits over the top of the area in question, and then simply gluing that into place, as you can see here on the screen. So, there you go, something like that. We can then repeat the process and hide any folds or tears in the paper that we'd really rather not be there. Plus, it also just makes the roof look a bit better, in all honesty. It makes the hides and skins appear to be a bit more layered, maybe even suggesting that they've had to be repaired or patched up in places. But yeah, I'll leave the video running while I add a few more, just so that you can see how many areas I've had to fix and cover up. So there you go, there's the finished hut, and as you can hopefully see, just adding a few extra skins on top, that's really improved the look of the whole thing. And like I say, these can be made with different kinds of walls, so maybe the chieftain has a hut made with stone walls, whereas the witch doctor's hut, that's made from wooden logs. It's up to you. Anyway, there's still a few more things included in this PDF, so I'll just quickly run through those as well. Okay then, so you might have noticed that I filled the space inside the door frames with a few different shield designs, which just need to be cut to size, and you could maybe hang those on the outside of a few of the huts, if you like. I've also included a couple of banners, like this one here, which I've cut to size off camera. And to make these, we'll first need to fold it in half, then cut out the white gaps along the top. They only appear on the front side, so you don't need to worry about how they look on the back. So there you go. And in addition to the banner itself, we'll also need 2 more toothpicks, covered in the wood texture as before. Next, we can apply some glue to the back of the banner, just using the glue stick again, and then drape that over one of the sticks, gluing the front and back together, and making sure it's all aligned nicely. So something like that, which we'll then put to one side to dry. Okay, once it has dried, we'll just need to cut away the torn end, which is what you can see me doing here. So yeah, that's that done. Then it's just a matter of giving the banner a few folds and creases to make it look a bit more 3-dimensional, and then using the glue gun to glue the second stick into place. So the kind of thing you can see me doing here on the screen, which, when the glue's set, looks something like this. All that's left to do then is cut away any excess material with the clippers again. There you go. And then stick that down to a base of some description. Here I'm using a bit of card with one of the grass textures stuck to it. And there you have it. There's a little banner, which, you know, maybe that could be placed outside the hut of a specific person of interest, or something like that. But yeah, with that done, that's pretty much it for this episode. So here's a picture of my own little orc village that I'm making, and you might notice that I've also made a larger hut, which was made in the same way, except that instead of using 2 pieces of the toilet roll tube to make the walls, I increased that to 3. I made the roof a bit taller by using a longer piece of a drinking straw, and I also had to use barbecue skewers for the roof supports, as the cocktail sticks, they just weren't big enough. Anyway, thanks for watching as always, and I hope you enjoyed this one. There's a little like button beneath the video if you did, but yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.